When it comes to any of the movies that I've seen during the early 2010s and also during my last 3 years of elementary school, I would never thought that the day would come of me having an emotional attachment, hyperfixation, and special interest for one of them. And this film is none other than Rio, which was released by Blue Sky Studios in 2011. If any of you were to ask me what are my favorite animated films that isn't Disney or Pixar, Rio would be one of them. From the characters to the animation and colors to the music, I'm so deeply in love with everything about this film, and it definitely made me develop my love for birds more. And for a film to have an expanded franchise and something that has nothing to do with the Ice Age franchise, it felt like a solid stepping point for Blue Sky Studios and during their lifetime until their closure in 2021. So, where does this lead to now when it comes to Rio? Are we ever going to have a Rio 3? Is there enough faith and potential to see the franchise expand more after Blue Sky's closure? So, sit down and get comfy as we dive deeper and go on another trip down memory lane with another of Blue Sky's franchises. From there, we will be talking about the Rio duology, the potential of Rio becoming an expanded franchise, or lack thereof, and Blue Sky Studios in general, and where their animators and staff members are right now after closing their doors. Hello, and welcome to part 2 of this 2-part mini-series of me talking, gushing, and rambling about the Ice Age and Rio franchises, and also me giving you some hana-chan lore. In today's video, we'll be going over the Rio duology, and if you haven't seen part 1 in which I talk about the Ice Age franchise, feel welcome to check that out as well, if you wish. And I think that's all I gotta say. I don't have anything else to add, so let's get started. So once again, sit down, relax, and grab a snack and drink. We're going to talk about the Rio duology. Let's go back to where it all started. Director Carlos Saldana first had the idea for the film in 2005 involving a penguin being washed up on the beaches of Ipanema. It was changed to the current story regarding the Spix macaws after he learned of Happy Feet and Surf's Up being produced, where those two films involved penguins. The following year, Saldana pitched the idea to Chris Wedge at Blue Sky Studios in 2006. Saldana showed the animators maps and books with geographic landmarks and measurements from which they built a digital version of Rio. A group of artists would visit Rio to see the various story locations, and animators also met with an expert on macaws at the Bronx Zoo to gain insight into their movement and personalities. Saldana himself is a Brazilian from Rio de Janeiro, so such elements of Brazilian culture and landmarks were also influenced from Saldana growing up in Brazil. And on April 15, 2011, Rio was released, received generally positive reviews from film critics who praised the visuals, voice acting, characters, and music, a box office success, grossing over $143 million in the United States and $484 million worldwide, and even nominated for Best Original Song for the song Real in Rio at the 84th Academy Awards. The movie tells the story of Blue, a domesticated male Spix macaw who can't fly and is taken to Rio de Janeiro to mate with a free-spirited female Spix macaw named Jewel. The two eventually fall in love, and together they have to escape from being smuggled by a cockatoo named Nigel. Now, before I get into my overall thoughts with the movie, I do want to talk about how I first discovered it. I remember back in February 2011, I was out with my family going to an outlet store one day, and over there I saw a billboard of the characters from the movie, and I didn't think too much about it and went on with my day. Flash forward to the next month, I would see the characters again, where they were tied in with Angry Birds for Angry Birds Rio. I even had an Angry Bird phase around that time. See one of my old internet friends on YouTube looking forward with the movie, and see some of the commercials and trailers, and at that point, the latter definitely convinced me to give the movie a watch, and I'm so glad that I did. Rio was one of the movies that my friends and I talked about non-stop in school, and I even got to reenact scenes from the film with one of them. Don't even get me started about our love for the song Hot Wings, because my friends love when I do Jules' Laya part in that song.
Hey, hey, ah! Laya, 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 Laya.
As the the story felt cliche and predictable, although I had no concern over that around the time of the film's release, as kid me had no worries and wanted to have a good time. The characters, animation, and colors, and of course, the music really sold it for me. And as I've said before, the film made me develop my love for birds more. Leading to 2012, this was where my love and obsession for Rio would grow more as I went to look up fan art of the film on DeviantArt. And this was a year before I joined DeviantArt, by the way. And because of that, this would be a film that convinced me to go onto new horizons with my creative endeavors, but most importantly, this was where my hyperfixated personality would develop, and Rio would be one of the pieces of media where I would develop a deep and special interest in. I feel like no matter how many people that I know who saw my obsession for Rio as cringy and embarrassing, at the same time, Rio has become one of the sources for happiness, especially having to go through some shit in early 2012. In fact, it was one thing for my friends and even my sister to acknowledge my love for Rio, though I had to hide the hyperfixated side of myself just so that I don't scare or embarrass anyone. While I think that the fandoms for Rio and even Ice Age had a small following around the time I first got into them compared to the other fandoms with massive followings like My Little Pony and Sonic, fandoms that I am also in, regardless, everyone in the former two just wanted to share the love and even nostalgia for these movies. Now, when it comes to my time in the Rio fandom, as I brought up earlier with looking up fan art of the film on DeviantArt, it was usually Nico and Pedro fan art I looked into the most, especially with Pedro, which would eventually lead me to having a crush on him just because I think he's cute and funny. And oh my god, you're going to hear me sound like a joy kill regarding Nico because it irks me a bit on how I feel like I'm the only Pedro fangirl here. Go ahead and argue with the wall, eat my shoes, and even poke fun at me and my Pedro plushie. I have no shame. I also believe the Rio fandom introduced me to OCs and xXHanaChanXx. This also happens a lot to Nico and Pedro, especially with Nico. I even wanted to make a Rio self-insert and ship myself with Pedro, but I believe around this time, xXHanaChanXx and even the whole Mary Sue thing were taboo subjects. Listen, be cringe and be free. If you want to ship yourself with a canon character for fun, go on right ahead. If you want to add substance and development to the ship where it doesn't just involve lovey-dovey scenarios, then that's great too. The most important thing at the end of the day is to just have fun. Heck, I even got out of my comfort zone to do some OCX canon art of my Lioness Susona self-insert with Diane Foxington from The Bad Guys because I'm so bi for her and I'm sure she loves me too, but anyway, I still don't think it would be too late to make a Rio OC self-insert though. With all of that being said, overall, I had so many great and fun memories with the movie and its fandom, and I'm grateful for how they shaped me into the person and artist that I am today. On January 25, 2012, while speaking to the Associated Press, Brazilian musician Sergio Mendes, who was one of the producers for the music for the first film, spoke about the sequel saying, "I think the plan is for the movie to come 3 or 4 months before the World Cup. Fox has been talking about it and it looks like it's going to happen. We're going to have a meeting, I think, next week, and Carlos is coming to town to tell us the story, and it looks like it's a go." In October 2012, Variety stated that Carlos Saldanha had officially signed a 5-year deal with 20th Century Fox that allows him to helm live-action and/or animated films, with the sequel being in part of the contractual agreement. In January 2013, Rodrigo Santoro, Tulio's voice actor, hinted that the sequel setting will involve the Amazon rainforest. 20th Century Fox and Blue Sky unveiled the first teaser trailer at the annual Las Vegas, Nevada CinemaCon on April 18, 2013. On May 14, 2013, that same trailer was released online worldwide and attached with Blue Sky's Epic. Released on April 11, 2014, it grossed $498.8 million worldwide against a production budget of $103 to $130 million, but received mixed reviews from critics, praise for the animation, voice acting, and songs, but criticism for the story, writing, and characterization. This was Blue Sky Studios' first and only follow-up film outside the Ice Age franchise, and also the final Rio film to be produced before their closure on April 2019. 2021. Story-wise, Blue, Jewel, their 3 chicks, and their friends travel to the Amazon rainforest where Linda and Tulio discover there may be more wild Spix macaws. There, Jewel is reunited with her long-lost father, and Blue struggles to impress him and adapt to the wild, while Nigel seeks for revenge on Blue. Now, my initial thoughts regarding a Rio sequel was something that needed to happen. I truly believe that Rio has potential regarding expansion in the characters and world building. I'll never forget back in 2012 thinking about how Rio 2 would be released in 2014, where around that time I was in 7th grade in middle school. I was 10 when I saw the first film and I was 13 when the sequel came out. And for those who are wondering, I'm 23 now. Jesus Christ. It feels night and day for me, and even though there's a 3-year split between the 2 films, the wait for the sequel still felt a bit longer. I won't forget around the time when the teaser trailer for the sequel dropped, I wanted to experience seeing it first by seeing Epic in theaters, which actually never happened, and I was even jealous that my cousin and friend got to see Epic, so I ended up watching the teaser on YouTube instead. Where I did get to have the movie theater experience in seeing that teaser trailer, however, was when I went out with my mom and sister to see the DreamWorks movie Turbo on July 2013. Do you guys still remember Turbo? And that's when they learned that Rio is getting a sequel. Leading to my overall thoughts on the movie, I would say it was okay. Even for a sequel, it's not bad, but I don't think it excels either. I won't go out of my way to say it's better than the first film either, but I still had fun with it. So let me go over the things that I like in the sequel. The animation and visuals are gorgeous as always. The music was also good, though I do feel like the songs here feel inferior than the songs from the first film. Like, I only like 2 to 3 songs from the sequel, and that's about it. And I liked some of the new characters. Out of Blue and Jewel's kids, Carla's my favorite just because I feel like I can relate to her in a way with her love of music. Gabby was adorable, and I also love Roberto. I may be a bit biased. I love Bruno Mars. Now, on to the things that I didn't like, or what I have problems with, to put it lightly. I will admit that the writing feels clunky and all over the place, and as the story was cliche and predictable, I won't go out of my way to say it's the worst either. In fact, we're the last few remaining of our species, but oh, turns out they are still alive, and our non-extinct bit did remind me of Ice Age 2, where Manny and Ellie were the remaining mammoths, and the mammoths being extinct bit did play a part in that film. I can't say mammoths, but anyway. And in the end, they found out that there are more mammoths, and they're not extinct at all. In fact, the way I see the connection is that the first Rio film has the act of Manny and Ellie first meeting and getting along in Ice Age 2, as they were, you know, the only mammoths alive, and with Rio 2 having the Spix macaws still being alive, it reminded me of the ending in Ice Age 2, where, again, Manny and Ellie, they're not the only mammoths after all. I hope I did my best in describing all of this. While I don't have any problems with a cliche or trope like that, I do think it could use some work and improvement. Finding out that the Spix macaws are still alive and there's a number remaining isn't a bad premise by any means, because I feel like it was bound to happen, though I can understand why it can be a problem, which leads to the characterization for some of the characters. Even though Blue and Jewel's kids were adorable, they were just there and don't add too much regarding the plot, but it's whatever. Raphael, Nico, and Pedro were served as a B-plot, so I guess that's fair enough. I don't think it would bite if we got a few more Nico and Pedro moments in the movie though, but I digress. The villain also felt underwhelming and forgettable. On one hand, fuck deforestation and illegal logging, and on the other hand, he and the other loggers just ain't it for me. I didn't forget Nigel, by the way, but he was a wuss in this film. He does earn a win for his audition of I Will Survive though. Charlie was forgettable, and I don't think I want him to be part of the main cast for a 3rd installment. And now we head on to Blue and Jewel, especially with Jewel. While I will admit the conflict between the two regarding Blue's use of human stuff and Jewel's disdain to it and wants to adapt into the wild can be all over the place, I do think that the criticism regarding Jewel's characterization is justified to an extent. Like, Blue's trying his best to adapt into the wild and impress his wife and her dad. Like, please, cut him some slack. All in all though, while Rio 2 was a groundbreaking sequel, it was a decent film for me to experience. And as I've prefaced in the very beginning, I felt that Rio having an expanded franchise and something that has nothing to do with the Ice Age franchise was a solid stepping point for Blue Sky Studios and during their lifetime until their closure in 2021. fun. Later throughout this video, I want to touch on Blue Sky's low track record on franchises and minimal filmography, but I will admit one thing for when I say that it was at least refreshing to see Blue Sky expand onto new horizons for another IP into a franchise that isn't Ice Age. And lastly, I will admit that the Rio hyperfixation came back around the time of the film's release, though I don't think it ever hit the same like how I was hyperfixated with the first Rio film years before the sequel came out, but I did get a few watchers and made some friends when it came to my Rio stuff during my early DeviantArt days. And given the fact that one of my old friends also attended the same middle school I went to, though he was an 8th grader around that time, did I tell him, or any of my other friends for that matter, about the movie? No, I didn't. I didn't do it for the sake of not being seen as childish for doing so, yet everyone in middle school were talking about and singing Frozen around that time. Also, the fact that it's been a decade since Rio 2 came out absolutely blows my mind. My goodness. So here in this segment, I am going to be talking about the future of Rio, what I would like to see if it ever comes to fruition, and thoughts and predictions. When it comes to developing a Rio 3, Carlos Saldana kept the possibility for it open by stating, "Of course, I have a lot of stories to tell, so we're starting to prepare for it." On January 22, around the time the Bugs spin-off film was released, a media kit promoting the film revealed that Ray De Laurentiis is working on the 3rd installment for the Rio franchise on Disney+. And of course, I have to bring up the Nico and Pedro spin-off. In October 2019, after Disney acquired Fox, it was announced that a spin-off centered on the two was in early development for Disney+. Since then, the status of the spin-off has been left uncertain. Regardless of that, there hasn't been much news regarding the two as of right now. Now we get into the part on things that I would like to see for Rio 3 and the Nico and Pedro spinoff if they do actually happen. And in fact, I have a lot of things to say regarding Rio 3 than what I have to say about the Nico and Pedro spinoff. However, I want to welcome you guys in the comments for when I say feel welcome to add on and share what you guys would like to see regarding Rio 3 and the Nico and Pedro spinoff. While I don't think what I'll be bringing up might be substantial by any means, I still think it would be fun to just share on what I would like to see. For Rio 3, I have this kind of premise where Blue, Jewel, and the rest of the birds have to fly to Rio after the Amazon was caught in wildfires and the remainder of the Spix macaws are trying to adjust life in the city for the time being and trying to keep their species alive from extinction. Though having to bring up this kind of premise, there are two things that occur to me. One, the plot feels a bit reminiscent to Ice Age 5's plot, and two, I'm kinda a cruel human being for when I say that the 2019 Amazon wildfires inspired me to give Rio 3 that kind of premise. Don't even get me started on the Spix macaws actually going extinct in the wild since 2018 and are out of extinction since late 2013. Like, I'm so glad that they're still here, but at the same time, like, one day they're extinct and the next day, oh, they're still alive. Like, I'm this close to hurting my brain at this point. Now I'll add a few more on what else I like to see for the 3rd installment. Even if it might serve as some kind of B-plot, I do hope to see Nico and Pedro getting themselves love interests, and if that doesn't happen, here's to hoping it could happen for their spin-off series. I'd like to see Nigel and Gabby, Nigel especially, have a cameo, though it would be nice to have a new villain. Omit Charlie from the main cast. I just don't think he's worth it at this point. And yeah, I think that's what I want to see for a potential Rio 3. I won't be too mad if the plot is different compared to mine though. I shall now go over my thoughts and predictions in regards to the receptions they will receive and if their successes and performances will go well compared to the previous releases. Personally, I feel like both are going to become a mixed bag from a critical perspective and have some decent mini successes in terms of viewership. Part of me hopes that Rio 3 would become better than Rio 2 story-wise, but the other part fears that the story will dip in quality, and hey, if Rio 3's story does end up being a mess, then I'll forgive the faults that Rio 2 had. In terms of the animation, and knowing 20th Century Animation's history with them after their releases of the Bugs spin-off film and animated Wimpy Kid films, I could definitely see Bartle Entertainment being in charge of animating both Rio 3 and the Nico and Pedro spin-off, which, by the way, really quick, something that I didn't bring up in my Ice Age video, but I'm going to for when I say I hold no ill will on the artists and animators at Bartle. I may have spoken about how the animation in the Bugs spin-off film felt hit or miss, but I don't think the animation is the worst either. Is the dip in quality noticeable? Yes. Is it the worst thing that I've seen in animation? No, absolutely not. Not to mention, they continued production on that movie after Blue Sky closed their doors, and I have to give them props for that, even if the final product just ain't it. Again, the animation and visuals in that movie are decent and competent enough. It's the story and writing in that movie that I still have a problem with. All in all though, when the day comes when the third installment and spin-off show finally happen, whether they will be good or bad, or whether or not the Rio fandom will tune in, I'm definitely looking forward to them. Honestly, I feel like after all of the Ice Age stuff, especially with the Bug film, all that I need is a sprinkle of Rio, because I truly miss my birds. I will say though, I don't even know if the Rio franchise will keep going in the years to come, nor is it going to have the same charm and pizzazz that it had years ago, but I think the third installment and spin-off show feels enough for me. While I have talked about Blue Sky for a bit in my previous video on the Ice Age franchise, I want to talk about them more in this video as a way to celebrate their legacy and impact as an animation studio and where their animators and staff members are today, and also serve as a closer to this two-part deep dive miniseries of me talking, gushing, and rambling about the Ice Age and Rio franchises. To start, while I don't think Blue Sky was the best nor they were the worst by any means, they were an animation studio that I did care for when it comes to non-Disney / Pixar animation studios, even if it's mostly stemmed on the biases of their commercially successful franchises, though I don't dislike them for making films that aren't Ice Age and or Rio, and despite not getting around watching any of them during their respective timelines, I was all for them branching out onto new horizons and new endeavors. Now, to be a bit blunt real quick, when it comes to looking into their filmography and franchises that they produced, it's a low track record when comparing to other filmography and franchises produced by non-Disney / Pixar animation studios such as DreamWorks, Sony Pictures Animation, and Illumination, just to name a few. And given the longevity that they had until closing down in 2021, it's quite shocking. Now, I won't speculate too much in regards to Fox having Blue Sky feel overworked back in the day, and while these kind of speculations are speculations that I personally never took into consideration, I won't blame anyone for speculating on Fox stifling Blue Sky's creative decisions to work on other films and just make them work on more Ice Age movies. I don't know, I'm probably reaching too much on this, but I couldn't help but make that observation. Now, when I say that Blue Sky created an impact for me and many others, I genuinely mean it. After watching Rio and Ice Age Continental Drift for more than a decade at this point, I felt encouraged to give their future films a watch. Okay, well, I didn't get a chance to see Epic back in 2013, and I'm still bitter that my friend and cousin didn't invite me and my sister to watch it with them. So, because of that, I backed out. But once again, I do appreciate and have acknowledged Blue Sky getting to do other movies that's outside of Ice Age and Rio. In fact, a Blue Sky movie that I got around watching that's outside of Ice Age and Rio would have to be Robots, which was released back in 2005. While that movie came out many years ago, I got around watching it for the first time back in 2021, and I enjoyed it. That, and I had a robot phase back in 2021. I was down pathetic for Dr. Nefarious from Ratchet and Clank during that time. But nonetheless, the love and praise for that film is well deserved. Whether you know Blue Sky because of Ice Age, Robots, Horton Hears a Who, Rio, the Peanuts movie, and so on, their legacy will always live on. Blue Sky never dies. Now we get into where Blue Sky's animators and staff members are today, but first, I couldn't do this bit if I don't bring up Nimona, which was one of the films that Blue Sky worked on until operations ceased in 2021, leaving the film to get cancelled and only for the movie to be revived and picked up by Annapurna Pictures in 2022, with DNEG Animation taking over the production, and released by Netflix on June 2023, animators Nick Bruno and Troy Kwan were brought on to direct Nimona, given that they also directed Blue Sky's 2019 film Spies in Disguise, and the last film to be released by them until closing in 2021. Nimona was met with critical acclaim, and rightfully so, because I had a good time with this movie. Please go check it out if you haven't yet. You will not be disappointed. Getting back to where Blue Sky's people are right now, I do want to note that I won't be covering every animator and staff member, but there are a few that I'm at least aware of when it comes to their upcoming projects, so please feel welcome to share in the comments below on anyone that I didn't mention and where they are now. Nick Bruno, whom I mentioned earlier, is currently working with Annapurna Animation, which was founded by former Blue Sky Studios executives Robert L. Baird and Andrew Milstein, for an upcoming animated film that's currently untitled that he's going to direct. Chris Wedge, one of the co-founders of Blue Sky and the voice of Scrat, is also working with Annapurna Animation and will be directing an animated film called Fu, which is about the first fish ever to climb out of the water and onto land. Annapurna Animation is also working on a film adaptation of the 2022 video game Stray. While this upcoming Peanuts film isn't a sequel to Blue Sky's Peanuts, Steve Martino will be directing the former with Wild Brain Studios for an Apple TV Plus release. Martino directed Horton Hears a Who, Ice Age Continental Drift, and of course, the Peanuts movie during his time at Blue Sky Studios. And yeah, I think that's about it. Again, feel welcome to share in the comments down below on any other animator and staff member that I didn't mention and have missed and where they are nowadays. All in all, to the animators and crew, you absolutely have my appreciation and support, and I'm wishing you the best on your future endeavors. There are a few closing thoughts that I want to share before I wrap up this video. I want to reflect for a bit in regards to making this deep dive miniseries. Now initially, the purpose of making this miniseries is to at least do my best in talking about not just the Ice Age and Rio franchises and the nostalgia and memories they brought to me and many others, but also talking about their online fandoms and communities, my personal experiences being in them, and how they shaped me as a person and artist. While I'm not much of an expert when it comes to the fandom side of the two franchises by any means, I just want to go down memory lane and explain to you, my dear viewers, what it was like to go through all of that. I will say though, I learned a lot when it came to researching the information and development for those movies, and I hope it makes this miniseries worth it at least. I've said this before in my Ice Age video, and I think I'm going to repeat it again for when I say I don't think any of the Ice Age and even Rio franchises will have the same charm, wit, and pizzazz like it used to. At the end of the day, let's all be grateful for what we were given. Now, even if the future for them ends up looking like shit, I'm more than welcome to take one for the team in looking into what's new from them, especially if Rio 3 and the Nico and Pedro spinoff does come through. I don't even know if the fandom side of the two franchises will hit the same like they did many years ago, but I think it's whatever for me at this point. No matter the good and bad, I just feel grateful to be part of these communities and talk about my love and nostalgia for them. With that being said, I'm going to end it all here after talking so much. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, I want to thank you guys for doing so. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you aren't subscribed to the channel, feel welcome to subscribe if you wish. Don't forget to check out my social media platforms in the description below. Feel welcome to share this video, and finally, comment down below who's your favorite Rio character and song. That's the end of the video. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!